occur in many other mythologies. Now, the children of Heb and Nut are first Isis and Osiris. This is the goddess Isis. She is the throne on which the pharaoh sits. She is the throne. Here is Osiris, her twin brother. They are husband and wife. This is Nephthys, who is the wife of Set, who is the other brother, the younger brother and sister, Set and Nephthys. Now, in a famous night, Osiris slept with Nephthys, thinking she was Isis. This is inattention to details, and from things of that kind, bad results can follow. She then bore a child who was known as Anubis, and he had the head of a jackal. But Set didn't like this, and he planned revenge. The revenge was to take perfect measurements of Osiris and to have a sarcophagus fashioned that would fit him exactly. And a jolly party was in full progress when Set comes in and says, I have this beautiful sarcophagus, and anyone whom it fits can have it. So it's like Cinderella and the glass slipper. They all try the sarcophagus. And when Osiris is in it, it fits perfectly, and 72 attendants come rushing in, clap their lid on the sarcophagus, wrap iron bands around it, and throw it into the Nile. So there goes Osiris down the Nile. He's washed ashore in Syria, and a great tree grows around him and encloses the sarcophagus. Isis now starts out to find her husband. And, you know, she's a goddess, and somehow her intuition leads her. She comes to this place in Syria where Osiris is enclosed in the tree. Meanwhile, however, the prince of that little town has had a child. A little boy has been born, and the prince has built a palace. The wonderful aroma that comes from this tree has so entranced him that he has had the tree cut down and fashioned into a pillar in the palace. And so Osiris is in the palace in the form of a pillar. Well, Isis arrives, and she sits down by a well, and when the young women from the palace come out to draw water from the well, they invite this beautiful older woman in to become nurse for the child, for the newborn little prince. And she does accept the job. And she nurses the child from her little finger. I mean, goddesses can stoop only so far. Then at night, to give the child immortality, she places him in the fireplace and recites certain charms that the fire is supposed to burn off his mortal character and turn him into an immortal. Meanwhile, she turns into a swallow and, twittering mournfully, flies around the pillar. Well, one evening, the little boy's mother happens to break in on this scene, and you can imagine she let out a scream. There was her baby in the fireplace, and this nobody watching him, and just a funny twittering swallow flying around a post. And the child had to be rescued from the fire because the spell was broken, and the swallow turned into this beautiful nursemaid that they had hired, namely Isis. And Isis said, she explained the situation as well as she could, and then she said, and by the way, my husband's in that pillar. So she said, could you please give me the pillar so I can take my husband home? And the king, very polite, said, here you are, my darling. So there's Isis, you can tell by the throne on her head, and here's Osiris coming to her in the form of a pillar. He's put on the barge, and on the barge on the way back to the papyrus swamp, she takes off the lid and lies closely upon the dead Osiris and conceives Horus. Now, Osiris has two sons. One by Nephthys Anubis, the jackal boy, and another by Isis, Horus. She is afraid to go back to the palace because Set has assumed the throne. She goes into the papyrus swamp and gives birth to her son Horus. Here she is in solitude giving birth, and the god Amun comes and Tot come and assist her in the pain of the delivery. So there she is, and Set now chasing a boar. He's hunting a boar, follows this boar into the papyrus swamp, and my lord, there is Isis with Osiris's corpse beside her. In a rage, he tears Osiris into 15 pieces, scatters the 15 pieces over the landscape, and poor Isis has to go hunt for him again. So she is helped now by Nephthys, who joins her, and little Anubis, the little jackal boy who sniffs around, and they get 14 of the 15 pieces. The dead Osiris is associated with the rising of the Nile, which fertilizes Egypt, and the juices of his disintegrating body are identified with the waters of the Nile, and it is he, therefore, that is the fertilizing force of Egypt. The 14 pieces are put together, and here's the little boy Anubis in the role later assumed by the priests embalming, who reassembles the body and embalms it. The piece that was missing is the genital organs, which have been swallowed by a fish. And this is the background of the fish meal on Fridays. It's a sacramental consuming of the sacred flesh. Osiris, now no longer being a generator, is the image of the dead pharaoh, and he becomes the lord of the underworld. The resurrected Osiris is now the judge of the dead in the underworld. His son, Horus, who has been born and rapidly grown up, has engaged in a great battle with his uncle Set to avenge his father. In that battle, Horus lost an eye, and this eye is symbolic of sacrificial offering. It was through the loss of that eye that he brought his father back to life. Set lost a testicle in the combat.